Solemn representations and a formal protest from China to Japan as Chinese ambassador to Japan Wu Jianhao met Japanese Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs Takahiro Funakoshi over recent remarks from Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. Wu said that remark violated basic common sense and crossed China's red line. The Chinese ambassador warned Japan that using force to interfere in the Taiwan question will constitute an act of aggression, and China will deliver a crushing blow to Japan. He urged Japan to deeply reflect on its history, retract its egregious statements, and stop its provocations and overstepping behaviors. This came after Prime Minister Takaichi took a question concerning the circumstances surrounding Taiwan on November the 7th in the Diet meeting. She said that any use of force on Taiwan could constitute a survival-threatening situation for Japan. Later, Takaichi said her remark was in line with the government's position and she would not retract it. China regards Takaichi's indication of the possibility of Japan's armed intervention in the Taiwan Strait as extremely wrongful, dangerous, and provocative. In a rare diplomatic move, the Chinese Foreign Ministry summoned Japanese ambassador to China, Kenji Kanasungi, making serious demarches over the erroneous remarks. Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Sun Weidong pointed out they're a blatant interference in China's internal affairs, a challenge to China's core interests, and an infringement upon China's sovereignty. He stated that China firmly opposes and will never tolerate such statements. Chinese Defense Ministry spokesperson, Senior Colonel Jiang Bing, made admonitory remarks.
Should the Japanese side fail to draw lessons from history and dare to take a risk, or even use force to interfere in the Taiwan question, it will only suffer a crushing defeat against the steel-willed People's Liberation Army and pay a heavy price.
China has repeatedly emphasized that the Taiwan question lies at the very core of China's interests and constitutes a red line.
This action constitutes gross interference in China's internal affairs, a serious violation of international law and the fundamental norms of international relations. It also severely undermines the post-war international order and is a grave breach of the One China principle and the spirit of the four political documents between China and Japan, seriously damaging the political foundation of bilateral ties and hurting the feelings of the Chinese people.
Takaichi's remarks have drawn criticisms from many politicians in Japan. Speaking on a radio program, Ishiba said Takaichi's remarks were almost equivalent to, quote, "If there's something wrong in Taiwan, there's something wrong in Japan."
Regarding the Taiwan question, successive Japanese governments have consistently refrained from making decisive statements akin to, "If a certain situation arises, we will take such action."
Former Prime Minister Yukio Hatoyama said Takaichi is stoking crisis to justify military expansion. He added that the Taiwan question is China's internal affair. Former Prime Minister Yoshihiko Noda also called Takaichi's remarks a risky and reckless move. CDP lawmaker Ichiro Osawa warned that Takaichi's rhetoric fuels tension and is extremely dangerous for Japan's future. The term survival-threatening situation used by Takaichi is a legal term under Japan's 2015 security law, referring to an existential threat to which the country can activate its self-defense forces. However, applying such a term to Taiwan was not recognized domestically. The newspaper Tokyo Shimbun questioned whether Takaichi understands the seriousness of the issue, calling her comments careless and illogical. The Okinawa Times urged caution, warning Takaichi not to speak lightly of going to war. A Chinese analyst alerts that the very term survival-threatening situation can be misleading as well, since Japan had used similar excuses to wage wars against other countries.
Existential threatening is very serious terms with special and historical connotations in this case, in the case of Japan. As we know, historically, Japan, the Japanese militarism, Japanese empire, in modern times has for many times used these terms to justify its aggression against its neighbors. And for Chinese, clearly remember that back in September 18th, 1931, the September 18th incident, it was that was exactly the justification of Japanese empire, but military waging a war against Chinese. That is the beginning of the Chinese war of resistance against Japanese aggression. And arguably, 10 years later, back in December 1941, the Pearl Harbor sort of surprise attack against waged by the Japanese. Again, they used that justification.
Rejecting voices also came from Taiwan, calling Takaichi's claim overreaching and a provocation.
The China-Japan joint communique states clearly that Taiwan is a part of China. What right do you, Sanae Takaichi, have to interfere in China's internal affairs?
The Sino-Japanese joint statement was agreed by two sides in 1972, which is one of the four political documents serving as the ballast stone of their relations. The statement reads, "The government of the People's Republic of China reiterates that Taiwan is an inalienable part of the territory of the People's Republic of China. The government of Japan fully understands and respects the stand of the government of the People's Republic of China, and it firmly maintains its stand under Article 8 of the Potsdam Proclamation." This year marks the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression in the World Anti-Fascist War. 3 decades ago, Japanese Prime Minister Tomichi Murayama made a statement saying Japan had followed a mistaken national policy, advanced along the road to war through its colonial rule and aggression, and caused tremendous damage and suffering to the people of many countries, particularly to those of Asian nations. He called these as irrefutable facts of history.
I think the Murayama statement is a profound reflection of the great harm to Chinese people during the Japanese aggression era. It solemnly apologized and promised never to repeat the same mistakes. The Taiwan-related remarks made by Sanae Takaichi are an obvious negation of the spirit of the Murayama statement. It is a foolish comment.
2025 also marks the 80th anniversary of the restoration of Taiwan. In 1895, Japan forcibly annexed Taiwan through the Treaty of Shimonoseki, implementing a 50-year colonial rule, ruthlessly suppressing Taiwan people's resistance, plundering massive resources, and causing severe damages to Taiwan's economy, culture, and livelihoods. Taiwan's restoration to China in 1945 is a legal fact inscribed in the history of the Allied victory in World War II, remaining integral to the post-war international order. Historic documents provide interlocking provisions of international law that unequivocally affirm the legal basis for the return of Taiwan stolen by Japan from China. The Japanese instrument of surrender in 1945 referred to the legal foundation for territorial arrangements in the post-war order as cited from the Cairo Declaration. The US, UK, China endorsed document says, all the territories Japan has stolen from the Chinese, such as Manchuria, Taiwan, and Penghu Islands, shall be restored to the Republic of China. 4 years later, when the People's Republic of China became the sole legal government representing all of China, its sovereignty and territory over Taiwan was inked in the United Nations General Assembly, Resolution 2758.
In the past, Japan treated Taiwan as a colony and invaded the mainland. Do you think the Chinese people will forget this? If you dare to make remarks like this about the Taiwan question, it seems you think you're tough. Just try and see.
For the first time in history, since 1945, when Japanese was defeated, Takaichi, the high-ranking official like Prime Minister, to connect the so-called Taiwan contingency and its as equal to Japanese contingent and the exercise of self defense right, which is limited by the Japanese Pacific institution. And also for the first time, it is a kind of intention or announced intention that Japanese would with armed forces to intervene China's Taiwan question. And for the first time, I think Japan sort of threatened with the Chinese that it would with military forces. So it is a very serious and grave development. That's why the Chinese government has responded, and also the public as well, responded so strongly.
Many believe Takaichi's troublemaking with China aims to please the United States rather than its own security.
Taiwan is a part of China. Why should it be related to Japan's so-called survival-threatening situation? For Japan, the issue mainly concerns ship movements on the Pacific side, but there is no direct link. This rhetoric is being deliberately fueled to create tension, undermine China-Japan relations, and push Japan to further cooperate with the United States strategy. That is likely Takaichi's intention.
Magosaki also thinks the government is using the Taiwan question to divert domestic frustration, such as a limpy economy.
Directing public dissatisfaction towards external issues is the simplest way to manage it. This is not only driven by certain right-wing forces. Many people's economic frustrations are being artificially tied to a supposed China threat. That is the key point. This way, domestic discontent is redirected and absorbed. A mechanism like this has taken shape.
No matter whether Tokyo can adopt a correct and proper approach to the Taiwan question and respect China's sovereignty, China's stance is consistent. China cherishes peace, but is also resolute in defending its core interests.
China loves peace and honors its commitments. However, on major issues of principle concerning China's core interests of national sovereignty and territorial integrity, we will never make any compromises or concessions. No one should entertain the fantasy that China will swallow the bitter fruit of harming its own interests. Anyone who dares to challenge the bottom line of the Chinese people will surely face resolute counterstrikes from China and will be met with the impregnable Great Wall forged with the flesh and blood of over 1.4 billion Chinese people. Any attempts to obstruct China's reunification are delusional and presumptuous, and would be like trying to hold back a tide with a broom and are doomed to failure.